Welcome, everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR. On Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. And on LinkedIn, subscribe to us at Campaign for GLR. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. The webinar will begin shortly. It will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. Okay, once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details. Oops, sorry, jump the gun. I did first want to encourage everyone to fill out the What's Working exchange form that we have been promoting. We are gathering information about a few strategies related to learning loss recovery. The invitation is open to everyone. The form is quick and easy to complete. This information will help all of us understand what's happening in our communities and support engagement that will unfold later this year. The link to this form will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope that you can complete it as soon as the webinar ends. All your responses are greatly appreciated. Now I would like to share some housekeeping tips. First, we would love to know who's in the Zoom room with us. So please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to all who registered, as well as any follow-up resources and the slides from the presentation. In addition, we'll be having a brief on-screen evaluation survey during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. And finally, before we start, I just wanted to call your attention to our upcoming webinars. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a session on summer and OST, smart investments outside of school to accelerate learning. Next week on March 21st, we have an extremely exciting doubleheader, starting with a funder-to-funder conversation on making summer count, philanthropic opportunities for summer learning acceleration. We highly encourage you to attend that session as it relates to this one. And then at 3 p.m. that week, we'll have a session co-sponsored by Whiteboard Advisors, From Classroom to Community, Investing in Whole Child Support Systems from Cradle to Career. And finally, we'll have a session on March 28th, co-sponsored by First Book, on Access and Action, Why Diverse Books Matter. The registration links for all of these sessions will be posted in the chat box, and we hope that you can join us. Joining you now is Malai Amfar, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sierra. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Crucible of Practice. We're so happy that you're able to join us today. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading first acknowledged the importance of digital equity as a must-have to address learning loss even before the pandemic. With the closures of schools due to COVID-19, online and hybrid models being the primary vehicle for education in 2020, the need for digital connectivity became even more essential. You will notice that the mobilization of GLR communities to support digital connectivity will play a central theme in the engagement activities we offer this year and the years to come. For example, the What's Working exchange that Sierra mentioned in that link, we're gathering information very specifically about that. And this will continue throughout this month and for the years to come, as I said. It's no surprise that we will kick off our community stories with a deep look at how one community in Iowa is a trailblazer in ensuring that their children and families are ensured digital equity. Grinnell, Iowa, known to Iowans like myself, is truly the jewel of the prairie, and today you will see why. We are joined by core members of the Grinnell Education Partnership and the team who worked in a coordinated manner around digital connectivity. And there are many lessons in their story about collaboration, cross-sector approaches, and innovation to achieve a common goal. Their bios and the slides for today's discussion will be placed in the chat in just a moment. It is my pleasure to first introduce our speaker of the GEP team, Monica Chavez Silva. Monica serves as the Vice President of Community Engagement and Strategic Planning with Grinnell College. She has a wealth of knowledge in the areas of assessing community needs, leadership, philanthropy, and using the collective impact framework. So at this time, I would like to welcome Monica and pass it over to her. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Malai. I appreciate that introduction. As Malai shared, I'm Monica Chavez. I work at Grinnell College, where I serve as the Vice President for Community Engagement and Strategic Planning. And it's my job to kick us off today and introduce the rest of the team who you see here on the screen. And we'll be hearing from as we will kind of walk through Grinnell's story. First, a thanks to Malai and the whole grade level reading, Campaign for Grade Level Reading team. The Campaign for Grade Level Reading framework has just been really core to the work that you're going to see here today and the work that we've been doing in the community over the past several years. And as she mentioned, our work here today will focus on Grinnell, Iowa, in right smack in the middle of the state. So next slide, we will share a little bit more about what you'll expect here today. Okay, so members of our team, and then we'll walk through our agenda. Okay, first we'll be hearing a little bit about why digital equity in Grinnell, Iowa, what brought us to this work in the first place. As I mentioned, who specifically was engaged with this work? Malai mentioned the network and collective impact approach. And this has very much been a team effort. And we hope that you'll walk away at the end of the day understanding how different members of the team contributed and what different people are bringing to the work. I hope you'll walk out with very clear understanding of what we're doing in the area of digital equity, the results we're seeing, and then some of our reflections about challenges and key takeaways from that work. So first, a little bit about the community and to get us situated. As I said, I work at Grinnell College. We're a small private co-ed residential liberal arts college in the middle of Iowa. It's a top 15 liberal arts college in the nation. So we're very proud of that. Pretty small, 1,700 students. And very diverse, a lot of international students, a great number of students of color. And I say we're a small college, but we're also a small little town. So Grinnell, Iowa has about just shy of 10,000 people. So the college is a significant presence. And because of that presence, we take our role as a backbone institution pretty seriously in this work. So we recognize that we are an anchor institution in the town, that we can bring a great deal of people power and certain resources to helping elevate this work. So the next question would be, why would a college, liberal arts college, even get involved with early childhood literacy? So on our next slide, I can share a little bit about that work. Really started in 2015 with kind of an unexpected confluence of events. There were a few different things going on. First and foremost, our president of the college at that time thought that it was important to create a college and a school district task force to think about better connections between those two institutions of learning. For faculty and staff who come to the college, certainly the education and the school options available to their children is of high importance. So there was this task force that was formed, some reports and assessments that were developed, some recommendations. So a lot of ideas, but then what to do with that. At that same time, we were made aware of a few different options. This was the first time we'd heard of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Through some learning opportunities with the Iowa Council of Foundations. We'd seen what other communities in Iowa were doing and had the opportunity to bring some of those speakers here to our town to talk to a great number of community organizations to see if this model felt like a good fit for our community. And at the same time, we learned, again, through the Iowa Council Foundation, so very grateful to that organization, about a new AmeriCorps grant that was being made available at that time with special focus on rural communities. So as we thought about the work that had to be done, the campaign for grade level reading that really sort of centers the schools and lets the schools do what they do best, but really challenges the rest of the community to support that infrastructure. And then new resources with the AmeriCorps program, we really thought that we had the makings of putting something new and different together. We also had the ability to partner with our local community foundation, who was also very strongly placed to help provide some what we call backbone or support roles for allowing other people in the community to do the work that they really do best. So with that, I'd like to introduce the head of our local community foundation, Nicole Brewer-Behrens.
Thank you, Monica. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Greater Poweshiek and why we felt we should be involved in the program as well. So we've also been involved with the Grinnell Education Partnership since 2015. As an organization, we've been around since about 1989. And you can advance the slide too. Sorry, I should have said that. And, we take our role as one of the backbone organizations very seriously. We do a variety of things just like Grinnell College. We serve as convener, supporter, communicator, evaluator, accelerator, and those roles are shifting constantly too. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we have two core values that really aligned well with this program, and I think those values also made it very clear that Greater Poweshiek should be involved. One of them is that GPCF, and I'll use the acronym GPCF for our organization, works to strengthen and mobilize nonprofit leaders, donors, and community members to respond to emerging needs. And those needs will be talked about a bit later. And we speak up to take risks to fight for justice, equity, and systemic change. And as Monica shared, the Iowa Council of Foundations provided several, and that's our state philanthropic organization, provided several opportunities for us to hear about the campaign for grade level reading and even hear from some of the communities in Iowa that were doing it. And once we brought the idea of the campaign back to the community, it was wholeheartedly accepted and embraced as something that we should do. Next slide, please. So then we kind of move into that digital equity idea, and why digital equity in Grinnell. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So Grinnell and Monica shared some of this information. We have a population of about 9,500, a little over 9,500. We only have one school district, and there are several schools within that district. There are three elementary schools actually, a middle school and a high school. We have 2 colleges in our community. We have several employers that include agriculture, insurance, education, and internet, among others. Next slide, please. This slide talks about the varied experiences that families have in Grinnell. And it was, once we saw this slide, it was just very clear that we should be involved in the campaign and that there is much work to be done. This map shows pockets of poverty, and we know that kids have different experiences growing up, which are often dictated by where they live. Unlike large cities, we have only one zip code in Grinnell, and this visual prompted leaders to create the Grinnell Education Partnership and bring community stakeholders together to work to make a difference. And what was really appealing about the program was that the nature of the campaign and how it was how it's organized provides a really flexible framework. And we found that very appealing. And over the years, we've kind of changed up what we've done depending on what the needs were in the community. But back to the slide, the dark blue area is the area where the percentage of households below the poverty line is 7.7% compared to, the light blue area is 7.7, the dark blue areas, it jumps to 23.9. Let's go to the next slide, please. And this is another map of the community that indicates the digital divide. And you can see the light blue, light green area also matches the area in the previous slide. And it indicates that 60 to 69 in the light green area, 60 to 69% of the households living in that neighborhood report having some sort of broadband internet subscription. The dark blue area shows about 80 to 89% of the households have broadband internet. And what's also really interesting about the light green area is that it's considered an opportunity zone. It's a designation that the city of Grinnell applied for, and it's a federal designation. And what that means is that that this is an area that the community should focus on for investment. And the area also reports median household income of $38,000, which is 39% lower than the state. Households below the poverty line in this area are 16%, which is also higher than the state average. And the median home value in this opportunity zone, or this light green area, is approximately $110,000, which is 31% lower than the state of Iowa. Could we go to the next slide, please? So this slide represents a balance between barriers and access. During COVID in Grinnell, like other parts of the country, students who did not have access to educational content in their homes, many students did not have access to educational content because they didn't have internet. Families couldn't afford the cost of internet, and as a result, there was learning loss and the potential for the continuation of the cycle of intergenerational poverty. And so you'll hear more in a moment about how several entities came together to provide connectivity, which was just such an amazing thing in our community to have happen. And I'm going to introduce Melissa Strovers to describe who was involved in the project.
Thank you, Nicole. Please advance the slide. So as Nicole mentioned, in this particular section, we are going to do a deep dive into who is involved in this work and the network-based approach used to tackle a complex issue like digital connectivity. In the next slide, you'll see a triangle, which outlines the framework that we use. As I mentioned, we'll address first who is GEP and what is our purpose. At the end of the presentation today, a link to our GEP webpage, along with a video and other resources, will be provided to you. Let's start by talking about GEP's mission. GEP's mission is to support youth and families in Grinnell by aligning community organizations and infusing support for early literacy enrichment activities, equity and inclusion, family engagement, workforce development, and financial empowerment activities to help interrupt intergenerational poverty. Our approach aims to support the whole family to ensure the success of Grinnell's next generation. As you have heard from Monica and Nicole, Grinnell College and GPCF have performed the backbone functions for the Grinnell Education Partnership since 2015. Those backbone functions, as Nicole mentioned, include facilitating, coordinating, communicating, connecting, resourcing, and evaluating initiatives for the network of community organizations. 20+ community organizations are involved in this project who bring their respective resources, skills, credibility, influence, access, and knowledge to the table to advance initiatives that support children and families. Since GEP's inception, over 189 AmeriCorps and/or AmeriCorps Vista members have been engaged to provide direct service or build capacity for community initiatives working alongside of our partners. In the next slide, you'll see more about GEP's focus. Our focus, as I mentioned earlier, is to support youth in Grinnell from cradle to career, which is accomplished by aligning community efforts and infusing grade level reading initiatives through a collective impact approach. The Digital Connectivity Project aligns with one of our 4 current focus areas of equity and inclusion, as you see highlighted on this screen. Each year, focus areas are determined by our network at the annual stakeholders meeting, where we review data provided by the school district, identify emerging community needs, and determine our priority focus areas for the coming year. In the next slide, you'll learn more about collective impact. So GEP uses collective impact for our network-based approach. We were introduced to the collective impact framework through an article that was written in 2011 in the Stanford Social Innovation Review by John Kanea and Mark Kramer. The article explores how large-scale social change requires broad cross-sector coordination. For GEP, this framework provides an intentional way of working together and sharing information for the purpose of solving a complex problem like digital equity. So when would this be used? When you're striving for population level change, when it requires leaders and organizations from multiple sectors, and really when you need different kinds of strategies, not just the same old kind of programs and services. So why does it make sense for the Grinnell Education Partnership to use collective impact? Because it allows us to really tap into that power of the network. And you're going to hear a really powerful story here in just a few minutes from many of our partners today who have been working in this digital connectivity space. The depth and breadth of programming by leveraging collective expertise and relationships, as you'll see here with this digital connectivity project. And then my favorite part, the part I get most excited about, is this idea of co-creating solutions. So bringing folks together to really tackle complex problems. Next slide, please. So now that you've learned more about the GEP backbone from Nicole, Monica, and myself, and heard how GEP uses collective impact through a network-based approach, I'd like to introduce you to the lead digital equity project partners who are presenting with us today. Dr. Janet Stutz, she's the superintendent of Grinnell Newburgh Community School District. Liz Hansen, who's the executive director for the Grinnell Newburgh School Foundation, and the collective impact coordinator at Grinnell College, Jill Harris, a GEP project coordinator and AmeriCorps alum, and Steve Burnett, the general manager for Mahaska Communications Group. We are grateful to each of the project partners and the amazing work they have done and are continuing to do in the digital connectivity space. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to share our digital connectivity story. In the coming slides, we'll outline 3 phases of our digital equity response. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stutz to begin our story.
Thank you for joining us all today. My name is Janet Stutz. I'm the school superintendent in Grinnell Newburgh School District, and you can only imagine the impact of this group, the Grinnell Education Partnership, has had on our school district. Incredible partnership. For 38 years, I've been in education, and I have not seen anything like this from different states of service. So we are very fortunate to have an organization that supports our students in a variety of ways. And so, I want to move on to the next slide to talk a little bit about the Grinnell School District and a little bit more specifics. The Grinnell Newburgh School District, as you have heard, sits in the middle of Iowa, in rural Iowa. We currently house roughly just under 1,600 students, pre-K through 12th grade. And then our district, although we have one zip code in Grinnell, the school district serves 5 different zip codes. So we have 224 square miles of area in which students, travel to in town to their school. 5 schools are separated to one pre-K2, a K2 center. We have a 3-4 grade center. Our middle school, which is 5-8, and our Grinnell High School, obviously, which is 9-12. Very accomplished programs here in Grinnell. And this partnership has enabled us to meet the needs of our students and all the way from early childhood all the way through high school. So we are extremely fortunate to be able to have such support in our collaborative efforts. As you can see, our free and reduced population is roughly 34% within the school district. However, I believe this is underreported. And a lot of that is because of the fact as kids get to about 5th through 12th grade, a lot of times parents do not complete the free and reduced application. And so in our elementary schools, in one of our elementary schools, we're roughly at 42%. And we think that might be more reflective of the data that was shared here today about our community, as well as the trends moving away from free and reduced lunch applications. So we're going to move on to the next slide. How did Grinnell's Newburgh School District get connected to this project? Well, we just asked. We are so fortunate to have a group to go to, and we just ask. We were entering into a pandemic where students were, we were actually planning for asynchronous and synchronous learning. We are a one-to-one school district, so all of our students had devices, and to plan to get students, once that shutdown happened, to plan to get students their devices. And so teaching and learning can continue for our students was critical, but we knew there was a gap. And we were concerned about some students that weren't going to be able to participate during that shutdown. And so we just asked, working with our technology director, working with our school foundation, and with this particular group, how do we provide equitable access to our students? Specifically because we're in 224 square miles, and we also had a lot of students and teachers living in rural areas that did not have the connectivity. So asking for hotspots and trying to find a way to get kids connected was absolutely critical. And we were also fortunate that we had our school social workers, our counselors, our principals attempting to target those families that we knew needed support. And so everyone collaboratively working together to ensure that kids' needs were met so that learning can continue was obviously our priority. Next slide, please. In the pandemic response, you think about fall of 2020 to spring of 2021. Actually, when we got back to school, we required kids to participate, at least for high school, to continue on to get those credits. And then we had a volunteer component for students in K-8, and we were pretty pleased with the number of students that participated. But our concern at the time was that to ensure that the class of 2020 was able to fulfill their graduation requirements. And so that's why we had this requirement. And we also knew that all students didn't have home internet access. But our focus in order to make this happen was, we know, and we have a mission, and we live by this, is that we want to ensure that students are future ready. All students are future ready. We wanted to make sure we continued with real world applications in a synchronous or asynchronous environment, and to use those methodologies that can get to the core academic instructional practices in a one-to-one environment so that students were career and college ready. And that really was our purpose, that we wanted continuous learning, make it required, and ensure that during the shutdown, our students were not going to have learning loss. And at this time right now, I'm going to pass it on to Liz Hanson.
Thanks, Janet. At this time, I will provide you with why GNSF is represented here today. Our school foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have status as an affiliate of the Greater Poweshiek Community Foundation. The Grinnell Newburgh School Foundation Board and its supporters recognize that community support and engagement, along with sufficient resources, are key to the success of public education. GNSF raises and allocates funds for projects beyond those supported by the regular school sources that align with our mission statement. I joined the foundation in mid-2019, just before the onset of the pandemic, and I currently serve as the very part-time director in a capacity of 5 to 10 hours a week. My first GNSF initiative was a safety and security campaign to assist the district in keeping our kids safe. When Janet contacted me in late March of 2020, she was concerned about seniors who would not graduate and that all kids would not participate in asynchronous learning. So we were prompted to immediate action by the mission statement you see here. Next slide, please. So where and how did we begin? With community partners, of course. So in order to first assess the state of digital equity in April 2020, GNSF created a task force. It was called Internet for Students and Families in Need. We held a total of 4 meetings online during April and May of 2020. And we had great partners at that table. Of course, the Grinnell Education Partnership, the Greater Poweshiek Community Foundation, Mahaska Communications Group, the Grinnell Newburgh School District, the Grinnell Area Chamber of Commerce, Grinnell College, Drake Community Library, and the League of Women Voters. They all worked together to find a solution. And the work of this task force would inform all of the work going forward. Next slide, please. So based on the task force recommendations, the following list you see of action items followed. Fundraising and grant writing. We were able to raise over $10,000 very quickly due to generous community partners. We purchased 40 hotspots that were distributed to students and teachers, as Janet just mentioned, who did not have access to Wi-Fi. We engaged the Mahaska Communications Group to provide free Wi-Fi at various places in town. MCG lit up parking lots and proved to be a critical partner for resources. And the Grinnell Education Partnership also sponsors a robust summer learning program that brings together 5 community partners: the school district, our local library, and Grinnell College Museum of Art programs all moved online in the summer of 2020. And that required Wi-Fi access for student participation and for learning to continue. Again, the need for hotspots was paramount. Next slide, please. So moving into the fall of 2020, schools were open here in Iowa. We were learning that those 40 hotspots were not meeting the overall need. Home Wi-Fi for many families was a huge concern, as multiple family members were sharing a single hotspot. Again, in my very part-time position, there weren't enough hours in the day and week to find a solution for a low-cost plan for families who were unable to afford Wi-Fi. So enter my colleague, Jill Harris, who was at that time an AmeriCorps Vista member with the GEP team, who jumped in to assist me to add capacity and work on finding those solutions. The City of Grinnell's Campbell Fund supports individuals who need financial assistance. Jill and I drafted a proposal and met with City Council members to secure $5,000 in funding that was earmarked for home Wi-Fi and an additional 20 hotspots. In November of and December of 2020, while COVID spread rapidly here in Iowa, schools closed and online learning resumed. Next slide, please. So moving into early 2021, GNSF turned our attention to phase 2, sustainability and expansion. I was also aware of the increased home Wi-Fi needs. Hotspots were checked out through our school libraries, and educators were reporting equity issues for students. In response, GNSF created a new fund we call Stripes to support technology, resources, innovation, and participation for every student. The Stripes Fund goal is to make it possible for all kids to fully participate in school. So at this time, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce my colleague and cohort in this work, Jill Harris, and she serves now as the GEP project coordinator. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Liz. On the next slide, we'll begin phase 3 of our story, the community-wide expansion. The GEP is a grade level reading webinar frequent flyer. Okay, maybe that's just me, but I attended a webinar at GLR Week last July called $65 Billion to Advance Digital Equity, Leverage Challenges and Opportunities for State and Local Philanthropy. And that is where I was introduced to the federal Internet for All program initiative, which also included the Affordable Connectivity Program. And I'd like to give a shout out to the Education Superhighway and the Patterson Foundation for the excellent resources and information that were shared that day. We got a lot of great information there, and that's kind of how we got our start on this ACP road. Anyway, Liz and I were both on that call that day, and Liz is the Grinnell Newburgh School Foundation Executive Director. And in a conversation that we had, the ACP initiative blossomed, and the ideas just blossomed from there. We knew that we needed to pull more community partners to the table, and we really wanted to concentrate on capturing those organizations who worked closely with our most vulnerable families and could assist with building awareness of the new Affordable Connectivity Program. And I'll probably just refer to that as the ACP from here on out. As you can see on the next slide, the story continues in the fall of this year. GEP partners very closely with our public library, Drake Community Library, and because that entity, the library, is so deeply trusted by community members, it really made sense to pull them into the partnership. It also made a lot of sense to bring in organizations that worked directly with those vulnerable families. So the GEP hosted a meeting at the library with library staff and the Grinnell Newburgh School Foundation, Liz. An invitation was also sent for this brainstorming session to our family service providers, Mid-Iowa Community Action, we call them MICA, and also to the Grinnell Housing Authority. Mahaska Communication Group, who Liz already mentioned, was at the table for the task force that the foundation, the school foundation, had recruited, also was asked to join this team at the table. At this session, the group determined that spreading awareness of and about the ACP to eligible families in order to connect K-12 students for equitable learning opportunities was imperative. As a result, MCG developed and printed informative ACP flyers, which were then distributed to eligible families by our partners, the library, MICA, and the Housing Authority. And as we move to the next slide, you can see that December and January proved to be very productive months as MICA and the Housing Authority hosted ACP sign-up events, and MCG provided staff to assist families with the ACP application form. MCG also welcomed and continues to welcome eligible families to their place of business, which is located in downtown Grinnell, to assist those families with the completion of the application form, no matter the applicant's choice of internet provider. That's true partnership right there. MCG also assembled a $30 connectivity package for ACP approved families, and Steve will talk about this a little in a few minutes. The Grinnell-Newburgh School District Superintendent began inserting ACP information in her weekly update that is sent to a large number of inboxes, and school counselors and social workers began distributing flyers to eligible families in their buildings. Flyers were also handed out by teachers to eligible families at parent-teacher conferences in January. After MCG finished the installation of fiber in Grinnell, the school foundation is the funder via their Stripes program that Liz mentioned a little earlier, and MCG as the provider started a partnership to support families who don't quite meet the ACP eligibility requirements, but are still struggling to pay that monthly internet bill. On the next slide, Mahaska Communication Group General Manager Steve Burnett will guide us through the reasons why MCG was and is still eager to partner in the quest to build digital equity in the Grinnell community.
Thank you, Jill. I just introduced ourselves a little bit. Mahaska Communication Group is kind of became because of an accident, if you will. So back in early 2000, our parent company, Musco Sports Lighting, which is a worldwide sports lighting company, had a very difficult time with the communication needs here in our hometown of Oskaloosa, Iowa. So our owners at the time brought fiber into the community to handle that situation. At the same time, then, other entities in our community, our local college, the school, the city decided that they wanted some access as well. And so we developed MCG to build out the community of Oskaloosa in 2003. It wasn't until 2015 that we decided that perhaps we could spread the love, if you will, to smaller communities around us. And so today we find ourselves doing what we began doing, which was serving an underserved need. At that time, our parent company. Today in communities around South Central Iowa, 7 of them to be exact, that just find the local or the national providers unwilling to come to town because they don't find enough return on investment for their time. So our mission, in those communities is to provide the most reliable communication service and superior customer support. When we do that, we really do believe that we can help strengthen the economic vitality, the social development, and quite frankly, the overall quality of life in the communities and where we live and work and play. And I would challenge you, if you're looking to build this model in other places, that you find a local internet provider, if you will, much less bureaucracy to work through, more than likely much more willing to chat with you about an opportunity like this. So go ahead and switch to the next slide if you would. So one of the things I will mention before I get on the slide is and I saw it in the comments earlier in one of the chat rooms, is that 10 years ago, internet was probably something people would like to have. And in today's environment, internet is something you need to have. There's practically nothing you can do without that decent access to internet. So I want to talk about why we do this. I mean, what is it about MCG and why we would even think about doing this? Well, I mentioned Musco Sports Lighting, and they're very community oriented. And so it allows us to be the same way. So our mission speaks to this very topic. I mean, truly, through digital equity, that's how we're going to be able to fulfill our mission of strengthening, as I mentioned earlier, the economic vitality, the social development, and overall quality of life in the communities we serve. Most everywhere in Iowa lacks workforce. If you want to grow your business, you need a good educated workforce, and we truly lack that in Iowa. So building digital equity is the first step in developing that strong and viable workforce. I mean, many of the students that we're going to affect in a positive way will hopefully remain in our rural communities, and they need to have the education and skills needed by employers today. So quite frankly, participating in this program helps with our workforce needs in the future. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So let's talk about affordable connectivity. The federal government came out with a program in I believe it was 2022 called the Affordable Connectivity Program. And it's intended to help families in need help offset the cost of internet. And today, at least we provide an internet service of 100 symmetrical broadband for $30. And they receive $30 in assistance, which allows that internet to essentially be free. So the interesting part of this is let's take a quick look at who's eligible for that. And this is, understand, this is a nationwide program. It's a federally funded program. So if you'd switch the slide, please. What you'll find is that I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of the things that you'll recognize if they qualify, if they qualify for SNAP, if they qualify for SSI benefits, if they're part of the federal public housing assistance program, they qualify. If it was mentioned earlier, free and reduced lunch. If they qualify for free and reduced lunch, then they qualify for affordable connectivity. And down to number 3, if you or anyone in your household already receives a Lifeline benefit or meets the eligible criteria for Lifeline. Lifeline is a program, again, federally funded, that's been around for years, that initially was for the purpose of it was to stay connected. So it initially was for telephone, long before internet was even something people were thinking about. And today, most of it is used for internet. And you receive $9.25 off of your internet bill if you qualify for Lifeline. Now, the interesting part about that is, again, if you qualify for Lifeline, you automatically qualify for the Affordable Connectivity Program. All you have to do is enroll. So if you're in Lifeline, you get $9.25. You're already approved for affordable connectivity, so you just need to enroll. That's $30. Now you could receive $39.25 off your monthly bill, and that can be taken off any package that any of your local providers have. So it's a good benefit. The thing that we found as we move forward is that it's more difficult than you may think to get it communicated to folks. And that's the thing we're working through right now. I think that's our next challenge, is to work through how we can get that communicated in a way that that folks trust the program and that they're willing to participate. So move on to the next slide, please. So what have we done? I mean, we've been working on this for a few months. We just completed, it's interesting. I want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to these folks. We're new to the Grinnell community. I mentioned we're from Oskaloosa, which is about 40 miles away. It's been, I would guess we first contacted Grinnell 10 years ago and talked about bringing connectivity to the community. And then really took traction about 4 years ago. We worked with the chamber and the city administrator and began construction in March of 2020 and just completed construction here at the end of December of this last year. And quite frankly, are quite proud of the folks that we work with in Grinnell, and we're thrilled to death when they asked us to be part of this program. So really, we've only just begun, if you will. So let's take a look at these results real quick. If you'd switch to the next slide. So we've connected 19 families. Now, across our network, I mentioned we're in 7 communities. We've got quite a few more folks involved. So the opportunity here is tremendous, quite frankly. You saw a slide earlier from Dr. Stutz that saw that 34% are free and reduced lunch. All of those folks have the opportunity to enroll in this program if we can just inform them about it and find a way for them to understand the benefits that are available to them. Sustainability, the Grinnell Newberg Foundation, they continue to support families who signed up and other local internet provider, plus support families who are not eligible. I mean, let's remember this, and it was said earlier, well, it'd be wonderful if they sign up with us. That's not what the goal of this program is to get people to sign up with MCG. The goal of this program is to get people signed up. So we're going to do whatever we can to make that happen. We need to stay focused on the goal. And growth, again, as we continue to partner and are persistent in what we do here, I think we're going to find that once it starts, I think we're going to see tremendous growth and the opportunity for these children to get connected in a way that they, quite frankly, deserve. With that, I'd like to introduce again Dr. Janet Stutz, who's going to discuss the positive outcomes in education as we continue to address digital equity. Dr. Stutz?
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you again for your partnership here in the Grinnell Newberg School District and Grinnell community. You can go ahead and advance to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about, this is early data that we're trying to collect, for our dropout rate in the Grinnell Newburgh Community School District. As you can tell, in this, at the end of that year of that pandemic, we had 18 students that have dropped out, and then 2021, even more students were dropping out. So how do we keep kids engaged? And so what we did is we kind of examined all of the Wi-Fi hotspots and connectivity for those students to see if there was anything we can do. Is it access? Is it equitable access? And so we've been tracking the data. And these hotspots obviously went out for, students from a variety of different grade levels, but we were looking at the trajectory of identifying those specific students who were at risk and making sure that they had access. And as you can see, within a short time, we have been able to reverse that trajectory since the pandemic. Now, how did that happen? There's a lot of variables, obviously, with any type of program. So it's not one specific, but what I can tell you is we had the ability to hire a director of special programs who focused specifically on at-risk students and trying to decrease the dropout rate. And one of the things that was important is this, that she was a social worker by trade, but she also ensured that as we were creating this equitable access and connectivity, she was also reaching out to those families to do some intervention. So that has been incredible, and we continue to monitor that data and those students to ensure that they are connected. And our high school is doing a variety of wonderful things to ensure that our students who are at risk have equitable access to be career and college ready. So if you move on to the next slide, what we also did was we had taken a look at our graduation data for the high school students receiving the hotspots specifically. And although, yes, we did have, of all those kids that had hotspots, we did have some students that did drop out. We had some students that moved away. However, projected in 2023 to graduate we are seeing a 40% increase there, as well as students that had graduated, 32.5% of those students that were successful who had received the hotspot. So we've been tracking that data to ensure that we are identifying students to stay connected in school and stay connected to staff, which really helps to build, this connectivity is so important, as we've been talking about, access, and also to be able to have access to their teachers and to have access not only to the academia that they are studying, but also those relationships with each other. I mean, I watched a whole performance of our band, doing it online, and a lot of different things that were happening. Teachers were so creative to keep kids engaged. And without the support from this group, from the Grinnell Education Partnership, our students would have not had those opportunities and experiences to be successful and achieve that graduation. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to turn it back over to Jill, who's going to continue on with this awesome partnership information. So Jill.
Thank you, Dr. Stutz. We have it's a two-way street here, Dr. Stutz. You rely on us and we rely on you. Thank you for providing data. The school district is so good to share data with us, and that's very important to our work as we measure how and why. On the next slide, we know that we're far from completing this project, and although we have plenty of takeaways, we also have challenges and a fair amount of questions. So on the next slide, you can see that some of our ongoing challenges include gaining trust from families. And Steve alluded to this, Liz has alluded to this. We know that we must be true to our word and true to our work and honor our intentions as we move forward in this project. Earlier, Nicole shared the Census Bureau map that outlines the connectivity in and around Grinnell. We know that tackling rural access, remains a big to-do on our list, and we are, currently exploring some options. renewed push for sustainable funding, trying to stay abreast of and grasp new and or revised government programs, and establishing new partnerships as they arise are also challenges, especially as Liz has mentioned with limited staffing. The next slide is going to present a few of our takeaways. So we're just beginning this journey, we know that, and our goal is accomplishing short-term gains in the quest for long-term success. We can say that partnerships, and I think that you have already garnered this from this presentation, that partnerships are the #1 key to success, and that building trust is imperative to this work. That trust travels several roads: trust between provider and partner, and trust between partner and families. You also have noticed that having a community-minded internet provider as a partner is a must. Rural access solutions are slow in the making. Again, we're continuing to weigh our options and to see what's available. And although we would love to have every eligible family in the Grinnell area connected, we know that slow and steady wins the race. We have to always remind ourselves that one family connected is one family more than we had before. So on the next slide, a heartfelt thank you to the grade level reading for allowing us to share our digital equity story, and thanks to all of you audience participants who took the time to join us today. Links for our GEP website and our Facebook page are going into the chat now. Thanks to Malai for manning that chat for us. We would love to take your questions. So I'm going to turn it over now to Malai with the next slide. And here we go.
Thank you so much, Jill. If I could have everybody have cameras on, and we would remove the slide deck so we can see everybody. We do have some questions. I certainly have some that came to my mind as you were sharing out your story. I have one that I would like to lift up first that came in through the QA box. And this question is open to everybody. This is about funding, particularly federal funding. The question is wondering if there were any major federal bills in infrastructure, Build Back Better, anything that provided funding for the internet equity infrastructure, ARPA funds, anything that was available that was used. Can you talk a little bit more about any federal dollars that you were able to use for short-term or long-term sustainability with the connectivity project?
This sounds like a Steve question.
So interestingly enough, no, we're self-funded. We up to this point, to the point that we came to Grinnell, we funded the entire construction project ourselves. We are a bit different than other providers in that we do everything from start to finish. So we don't hire contractors. So everything from design to build to installation to customer service is done internally, so we can do it at a much reduced cost from what you might see it when you have it done and contracted out. Now, what I will say to you is that we're on a current project in our home county where we did for the first time ever reach out, and NOFA 7 funding here in the state of Iowa was available for underserved areas, and we reached out and received some funding for that. That was through the federal government and passed through the state. And we will use some of that to help build out the rural parts of the county, as well as our county supervisors had $2 million left over from the CARES Act, I believe, that will go into that project. It's a $13 million project. So, I do think it's a bit unusual to say, yes, we come into a community, we don't ask for anything, we'll pay the entire bill, and none of it was funded, and none of it is funded other than this thing that we're doing in the county right now. Otherwise, everything we do has been on our own dime, so to speak.
Thank you, Steve. It's very clear why having a trusted internet provider such as yourself is of huge importance to be able to bring that. I want to stay on the role of philanthropy and with funding for just a moment, because we know that philanthropy does play a huge role within the GEP partnership and that it's important for sustainability long-term. So this could be a question perhaps for Liz and for Nicole as executive directors of the philanthropic sector within this. Can you just share a little bit more about advice that you might give to a new GLR community who's just beginning to reach out for philanthropy and to try to understand, who might be invested in their work, who might be interested in this work. This kind of goes back to your origin story and getting philanthropy involved, because we know that's important. So can you just share a little bit more about advice that you might give to any new campaign that might be looking for support from philanthropy?
Well, Nicole is the expert here, but I'll start by talking about the school foundation. As a very new executive director in 2020, I was overwhelmed with the generosity of our community. We did, and our donations to fund this project were all local. And we started with we had some big funders jump on board. We had Grinnell College, the Claude and Dolly Arns Foundation, which the Greater Poweshiek Community Foundation is an affiliate with. Nicole can talk about that. They jumped on board, and we had a local business, Grinnell Mutual, make a big donation. So that really got us off the ground. And then we just started sending out constant contact emails and Facebook posts and outreach. And don't be afraid to work hard, and start at the grassroots level. I had great support from the Greater Poweshiek Community Foundation in working with me to do those. We did some weekly constant contact pushes, and some dollars would come in, and it was phenomenal. And then, as I talked about, Jill and I jumped in to go to our local city Campbell Fund to get more funding, but we did not pursue any federal dollars or state for the foundation. It was all local.
Great, thank you, Liz. Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to add too, for those of you who are out across the country, I think it's important to establish a charitable fund right off the bat with your campaign for grade level reading. And because I think there are lots of people in our community anyway, who were interested in funding that in general. And then we could work within our backbone group or our partners and figure out how to allocate that funding. So we have a general Grinnell Education Partnership Fund that has been in existence pretty much since the program began in 2015, I think. And every year, individual private donors give to that fund. And we also had the opportunity to apply for grant funding from a group of anonymous donors who fund projects in the state of Iowa too. And we maybe had our Iowa Council of Foundations, our state philanthropic organization, also supported the project. So I think, there are funders out there who are very interested in this kind of work, and you just need to be open and get, like Liz said, get the word out about your project.
Thank you, Nicole. I think you bring to light that there might be interest in stakeholders from all kinds of sectors. And certainly with your story, you have a dedicated cross-sector effort here with the school district, with philanthropy, with the college, with the community, with your internet provider. And I just want to lift that up a little bit more about how you work with various stakeholders. And so a question that I have for all of you is, you're thinking about the partnership, GEP partnership, all of the initiatives that you do. Are there any stakeholders that you might be looking to bring into the effort as things begin to shift, as you start to understand the various needs of the community? For example, you recognize digital connectivity as being very important. Are there other partners that you're hoping to bring into the fold as a long-term solution to some of these things that we're starting to learn that we need to have for youth and students? And this question is actually for anybody.
I'll jump in here. Is that okay, Jill? We can tag team on this. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a really interesting question, Malai. So, as Nicole mentioned, we've been doing this work since 2015, and we have over 20 plus community partners that we worked with over the last 8 years in a variety of different ways, depending on what the focus areas were for that year. I would say for us that most recently we've been engaging with the Grinnell Housing Authority, much like the national campaign is looking at doing. And I think for us to continue to build out and grow that partnership is one that's going to be important to us as we look toward the future of really trying to align community resources and maximize potential solutions to help them with some of the work and support some of the work that they're doing that reaches some pockets of population that we might not otherwise be able to reach.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Do you have anything to add, Jill? You're about to say something.
I guess I was being impatient that nobody had popped up, and there was that awkward silence.
Yeah, the wait time.
Right. No, Melissa hit the nail on the head, and we just know that housing is an issue in Grinnell, like it is in other places, and just by forming a deeper partnership with the Housing Association is on our radar. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to keep on this vein of, oh, go ahead, Doctor. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add one quick comment too for the audience that our English language learner population is on the rise. In fact, it has tripled in the last year. And so we have been partnering with a local group called COSY to assist our students that are coming from all around the world as well. And that might be a group that we should tap into, because they probably have the ability to connect some of those families that, and due to a language barrier, they might be struggling connecting. So I'm thinking that might be an opportunity for this group to connect there. We had a great event a couple weeks ago for our ELL students, and we tried to do sessions with them to help families find out where are the resources in Grinnell. And so this might be something to consider, just a thought.
I love that brainstorming as we're going through this. Thank you, Dr. Janet. I love that. And this kind of actually is a nice question that kind of goes into that, which is about continuing efforts to close the device equity gap or the digital equity gap. We've talked a little bit about ACP. This question came up in the QA box, and it really does speak to the students, and going along with what you were just saying, Dr. Stutz. Are there any continuing efforts to close the device equity gap that might be happening, set aside the connectivity portion?
That is a really good question. So currently right now, we're fortunate that we have what's called E-rate funding, right? And so 70% of our devices, one of the reasons why we're able to survive in a one-to-one learning environment, our students in pre-K 8 all have, or pre-K, I should say 5 all have an iPad. Our middle school, high school kids all have, I've got that backwards. We just switched. Pre-K 8 have an iPad, 9 through 12 have a MacBook Air. We're an Apple Distinguished District as well. And so all the students have a device. Students in grades 4 through 12 take the device home. But we are actually looking at, in order to enhance our funding practices, by even having our younger students 3 through 12 take the device home. But every student has access. And so we utilize instructional technology coach, as well as working with our Apple Distinguished Educator resource to provide instructional practices and how to deliver instruction utilizing the device in that what's called a SAMR model. And so that has happened, but there is some funding available through that to help offset the cost. Where actually, because of E-rate, our iPads for all the students are pretty much coming at a wash, where we're not paying for them. So E-rate funding is critical to this, as well as other governmental funding. We did have some ESSER dollars that will expire soon. That's through the CARES Act that happened. for software development, all of those types of things, instructional practices, social emotional learning that we address with our students as well. So those are just some sources that we've used to ensure that kids have equitable access, but every student has a device.
Great, thank you, Doctor. Let's stay on this vein a little bit with the digital connectivity component, and then I want to shift to partnership and collaboration. But just one question that I have for the team, this is pretty much open to everyone, is that you acknowledged early on the importance of digital connectivity, what that means to students, particularly students that have lower resources. You saw that as an important thing. Can you share a little bit more about how you continue to spread that awareness throughout the community? You did note in your presentation that you had a multi-agency task force to do that, to gain interest and investment. And are there, I guess my question is this, are there other things that you're doing to spread awareness of the importance of this issue? Or do you see the community as knowing already that this is an issue and now you're getting into maybe a phase 4 of the work?
Another great question, Malai. You know, the group that was convened earlier in the fall, we continue to meet, the stakeholder group continue to meet as needed, so that we can bounce off ideas and brainstorm more solutions. I try to keep in regular contact with our school personnel, our staff that have firsthand information. I keep in contact with Dr. Stutz. Those school social workers and counselors are instrumental in knowing who those families are and are the ones that can help build that trust. And I think as we keep squeaking the wheel, you know, the squeaky wheel gets oiled, that as families are hearing more and more over and over, what is it? Brain research says you have to hear something 7 times before it's retained, something like that. You know, us retired educators, Liz, we have that kind of stuff stuck in our brains, right? That families will start thinking, oh, this is a program that's going to stick around for a while. And okay, I'm hearing more about it. I'm starting to understand that this maybe I need to check this out. So just, you know, as we went through our presentation talking about that trust factor, I think that's the big hang up right now. Not only the awareness, but our families trusting that this government program is for real and that this provider is really going to offer me this package. And with these 2 combined resources, I'm going to get free internet. So it's just, it's a slow process, I think.
Yeah, you bring up a great point that trust is essential, particularly with having signing up for a program that is federally associated. And so I'm curious about if you have any folks in place to help with perhaps families that don't speak English as a primary language, knowing that could be maybe a barrier, language communication about the sign up. So do you use digital navigators? Can you share a little bit about what that might look like?
Yes, I can answer this question. We're really fortunate here in Grinnell with the resources that we have available. You know, we have currently 6 different languages in Grinnell that we serve. And so Spanish and French are probably the 2 primary, but we also use Language Line, which is a resource to provide interpretation or interpreters available to our families, I should say. And then because the college is such an amazing resource too, we have some advocates that work directly with our ELL students who speak either French and or Spanish and translate. You know, a couple of the languages have been a little bit difficult. Tagalog has been a little challenging for us, as well as Urdu. So those we've been using some Language Line, but for most part, those families are able to pretty much communicate somewhat in English to us. So it's not been that much of a barrier. So we have a wealth of people that we can contact, and because like we talked about, our college is so international, that if we're have a challenge, we just reach out to many other professors over there, and they've been able to provide students and or sources if we need them. So we're lucky in that respect.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the presence of the college. Just, I imagine, play a significant role to help with that. And one more question about ACP before I shift, and the next question would about collective impact will go to Monica. So Monica, be on deck. But the question about ACP that I have about families signing up, perhaps this is a question for Steve or for Jill. Do you have a goal? Are you looking at how many families have signed up versus how many you want to sign up? Or can you just share a little bit about if there is a goal for sign up, or how you're looking at who's connected and who's not?
Well, I don't know that I have a goal as far as the number goes. I think as a more of an overarching goal for me would be, I mean, when you look at just knowing that 34% of the population qualifies for free reduced lunch, so obviously more than that's going to qualify. I'd like to see, I mean, the idea, quite frankly, I grew up on a farm, and I'm old enough that internet wasn't a thing when I was a kid, right?
Right.
So I can't imagine in today's world being at the disadvantage of not having internet. And so I just think that it's important that somehow we figure out how we can hook up all these kids. So for me anyway, and I don't have a number because I don't know what the total number is, but it's, you know, until you get to where every child has the ability to be on equal ground with someone else, I don't think we're done.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that quote, Steve, in our follow-up resources. I think that's really powerful. Jill, do you have anything to add as the project coordinator?
I don't. We've not, like Steve said, we're not putting a cap on this. We just are gonna plug away until we can capture as many families as we can. We're just not done with this.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So Monica, as promised, this is a question for you about collective impact. I just want to kind of shift the lens a little bit and go broad with this. As you know, we have many GLR communities who use the collective impact framework, and we've talked a little bit about shared measures and some ways that you keep people engaged. Can you go a little bit deeper into the continuous communication aspect? So how do you continuously communicate these kinds of things? It's not really a pivot that your team took, but it is a new look at something that you saw as a need. Can you say a little bit more about how you keep stakeholders informed and engaged? That's all of the stakeholders that you might influence if you think about it in concentric circles.
Yeah, well, great question. And you're looking at the solution right here on the screen in lots of different ways. So I think about a couple of different things, right? We've talked about the college and the community foundation partnering together to really provide some backbone functions. One of the great services that the foundation is able to offer is their constant contact account. And so over the years, we've developed a great distribution list of all kinds of different people, individuals and organizations who are interested in this work. And Nicole is good enough to be the center point of distribution for those kinds of more formal messages. That's one thing. Two, you're looking at Jill, who I think you've already heard talk about her day-to-day job of connecting with this Grinnell Education Partnership. You know, so she is physically on the phone and writing emails and being in direct personal contact with a lot of people. So there's that personal connection as well. And then the last thing I'd probably point to would be formally on an annual basis, the partnership convenes a planning meeting for anybody and everybody connected with the partnership who would like to take part in what has turned into, actually we usually do it on Valentine's Day, it's kind of fun, what has turned into a little bit of reporting. So we hear some shared metrics, right? So everyone's looking at the same data together. We hear about the activity that's happened over the course of the last year, and collectively that group determines priorities for the next year's upcoming work. And so it really is a community-based decision on where that focus is going to take itself in the years to come. And so I think I'll stop there and toss it over, looking at Melissa, who is the powerhouse and driving this initiative too. So not knowing if anybody has anything else to add.
Yeah, I think that gets it. I mean, and I would add with our summer partners, Liz, working with them to launch the summer program. There are 5 summer partners that Liz and Jill are coordinating with to incorporate AmeriCorps members to help support summer learning initiatives throughout the community of Grinnell, working in partnership with our state partner Campus Compact for those AmeriCorps positions. And like Monica mentioned, I think it's just ongoing touch points throughout the community, much of which is identified through that annual stakeholder meeting and those emerging needs that are identified through that. And I'll just say it's a remarkable team. I mean, we are just so fortunate to have college resources, community foundation resources. We have 2 retired educators, and their connections in the schools are unparalleled, right? With Jill and Liz and the work that they do. And then with the district, with our superintendent, she's just been remarkable throughout this process. And, and we're just so thankful to have Steve here today. In fact, Steve at MCG was just recognized at our local Chamber of Commerce for receiving an annual award, I believe, for maybe partnerships, and Steve can address that, but still, featured. And so it's a great team, Malai. I mean, and I know you saw a preview and I won't go on about this, but we're just really, really fortunate to have this team in place and many more community partners who are dedicated to this work and have been over the last 8 years. And you heard some of those partners mention Drake Community Library, Micah, and I could go on and on about their influence and just being grateful for the campaign's framework. And that, like Nicole said, it's flexible. We've been able to adapt it to address our emerging needs, and for that, I think we're just grateful as a community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. I think the partnership and the relationships and the closeness that this team has is really evident as we've all witnessed in how you're able to mobilize around a common issue and then really get things done. There is a poll here that everyone is looking at, so we would love that if you're able to take just a moment to complete the poll in our efforts for continuous communication. I'm going to ask just a couple more questions in the remaining couple of minutes that we have. So this question is about the next phases. Monica and Melissa, you mentioned that you just had a partnership meeting and it was on Valentine's Day. Like, what, looking ahead as you gathered with your stakeholders and the people who are most close to this work, what are the next phases of the work as you were learning about what the needs might be? What are the next pieces that you see looking ahead for 2023 and perhaps even for 2024?
Do you want to take that, Monica? Do you want me to take that?
I think I'll let you take that. And Melissa
Okay.
has been working really hard and helping structure some of that thinking, and we're going to let her take it away.
Okay, and Nicole, jump in too. So we've been really working hard on focusing on the future of GEP, and so we are really excited about the future. We had heard from community partners last year that family engagement continues to be an area of opportunity, and there's a great need for family engagement. And so we have really looked forward at another Annie Casey research-based framework, the Center for Working Families, and looking at how we can use and leverage that framework to help support families through some workforce development programming and financial empowerment. So Nicole and I actually just presented to the Grinnell City Council, and we're able to secure some funding from the Campbell Fund, which was a fund that was established many years ago as they were looking to partner with an organization who is helping to support families. And so we really have this track record, plug and play of doing that. So we're really excited about moving into that direction of supporting the whole family. As I mentioned, we won't move away from some of the things we're already doing, continuing to focus on summer, but we will move in that direction of supporting families in this new way. And with that, I guess, Nicole, please chime in if I missed anything or there's anything to add there.
I don't think I have anything to add. It's really exciting.
Great, thanks, Nicole. And I want to apologize to everybody. My dog Fox has a lot to say on this topic. She's been chiming in too. If I could just have Sierra pull up, I've got just a couple more slides that I want to share with everybody about our look ahead as we look ahead to what's next for the campaign for grade level reading. Everyone has maybe seen us plugging in for the what's working. I'm going to put the form back into the chat. This is actually quite related to our conversation today. The campaign for grade level rating is what we're doing is trying to understand how our communities are working in this space. And so we are inviting everybody who is listening in today to complete the question form, which has now been linked into the chat box. Really simple survey for us to understand what's going on in your community related to digital connectivity and also a learning rich environment. So if you could just take a few minutes to do that, that would be awesome. And then the last slide, of course, is our upcoming sessions. This is a double header day. So we do have one more session about smart investments outside of school to accelerate learning. That's this afternoon. And looking ahead, we have a funder to funder conversation, learning loss recovery challenge conversation about whole child support systems, and then why diverse books matter, rounding out the month of March. So I want to extend a warm thank you to the team from Grinnell. I've been really excited about this session. I've known about the work of your team for quite a while, and it's been my pleasure to lift up everything that you are doing within this space. I also want to mention they have a very strong summer learning program too. So you might learn a little bit more about that later this year. But thank you so much for everybody for joining us and to this team. And please join us for the next Crucible of Practice in April. Thank you, everybody.